Well, I want to welcome everybody to Crossroads, everybody here in the auditorium, those of you sitting in the atrium and watching online. And before I jump into this morning's message, I want to make some comments about what's happened in our country in the past week. We began the week celebrating our freedom, and by the end of the week, we experienced another series of horrible, despicable, disheartening chain of events. Within 24 hours of our celebrating our Independence Day, a young black man was killed by a police officer in Baton Rouge. Then within 48 hours of that, another controversial killing of a black man by a police officer in Minnesota. And that brought out Black Lives Matter protests all over the country. And at one of those protests in Dallas on Thursday night, while the police officers were making sure the Black Lives Matter protesters were safe and secure, they themselves were ambushed. And a sniper killed 5 police officers, wounding 7 police officers and 2 civilians. I mean, these were a horrible series of events that are deeply saddening to me and very, very frustrating. And I hope they are to all of you. And I want to say a couple things. I wanted to first say, police officers do not become police officers to get rich and famous. They become police officers to do the right thing and to protect and to serve all of us. And laying their life on the line, that is not a hyperbole, is it? When they run into a crisis, when all of us run the other direction. And the second thing I wanted to say, vast majority of Americans don't wake up. I don't believe wake up every day making decisions based on the color of people's skin. Vast majority of Americans want everyone to live in peace and security and want everybody to be able to raise their kids. And when their kids go off at night, they want them to be safe and secure. And I think the vast majority of Americans want to view everyone as someone created in the image of God, of worth and dignity. And I think the vast majority of Americans are appalled by all of the senseless killing that has gone on. And I'm going to pray for the situation, but I think we need to do more than pray. Jesus said, "Blessed are the peacemakers." So one thing I would suggest before I pray is that we say thank you to people that are in law enforcement, in our community, to go up to them and actually say thank you for what you do. Thank you for serving and doing all you can, putting your life on the line to protect all of us. And we have police officers right here that we can do that for, that are in the atrium between services, often outside. Let's thank them. And then the second thing, this is a teaching moment for parents. I think parents should talk to their kids about what's going on in our country and recognize that there are struggles in our country. One of them is about racial divisions. And we should talk about the fact that violence will never drive out violence. As Martin Luther King said, hatred will never drive out hatred. Violence is never the answer to the struggles. What Jesus said, love is the answer. And we have to learn to love one another. And a third thing I would suggest that we do is build a bridge to people. Build a bridge, step out of our comfort zone and build a bridge towards someone that is of a different race or ethnicity than all of us. And let's make sure we're people and a church that is about uniting people. Uniting people here at the church, in our community, and not people that divide. Okay? Let's pray together. God, I want to first pray for all the victims' families that are grieving this weekend, that have lost loved ones in this past week. Family of the man in Baton Rouge, family of the man in Minnesota, the 5 families in Dallas that police officers lost their lives and won't be coming home, all of those people. And God, I pray for those that are wounded, that you would bring healing to them. And bring comfort, and your presence would be powerful, and that you would be bringing that healing in their life. And I pray for law enforcement here and around our country. I ask your protection is upon them as they protect us, as they go off to work every day and put their life on the line. I pray for their courage, their wisdom, and God, we pray for their safety, And for our country, God, I pray for reconciliation between races. I pray for peace. And God, we pray together for an end to this senseless violence that goes on and on and on. And we ask this in the name of the Prince of Peace, Jesus. Amen. Well, let's jump into our series. If you're new here, you haven't been here for a while, or watching for the first time, we're in a series called Psalms of Summer. And what we're doing for the month of June and July is we're taking a psalm every week, and we're looking at it, and we're discovering what that psalm has to say about our modern day problems. And when you think about it, if the book of Psalms, which is 3,000 years old, has anything to say about our modern problems, then our problems are not all that modern, are they? But in fact, I'm not so naive to think we don't have modern problems. We do have modern problems. But the solution to the problems that we have are very, very ancient. And today I'm looking at Psalm 27. Psalm 27 is about overcoming fear and anxiety and worry and stress. And I don't think there could be a more relevant psalm to look at today than this one. And I'm going to begin by reading it, and it's printed in the message notes. You could follow along. It's 14 verses. I'm not going to have it put up on the screen. You could follow along as I read, or you could just sit back and take it in as I read it. King David has written this psalm, and he begins in verse 1 by saying, "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? When the wicked advance against me to devour me, it's my enemies and my foes who are going to stumble and fall. Though an army besiege me, my heart will not fear. Though war break out against me, even then I'm going to be confident. One thing I ask of the Lord, this only do I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze on the beauty of the Lord and to seek him in his holy temple. For in the day of trouble, he'll keep me safe in his dwelling. He'll hide me in the shelter of his sacred tent and set me high upon a rock. Then my head will be exalted above the enemies who surround me. At his sacred tent, I will sacrifice with shouts of joy. I will sing and make music to the Lord. Hear my voice when I call, Lord. Be merciful to me and answer me. My heart says of you, seek his face. Your face, Lord, I will seek. Do not hide your face from me. Do not turn your servant away in anger. You've been my helper. Do not reject me or forsake me, God my Savior. Though my father and mother forsake me, the Lord will receive me. Teach me your way, Lord. Lead me in a straight path because of my oppressors. Do not turn me over to the desire of my foes, for false witnesses rise up against me, spouting malicious accusations. I will remain confident of this. I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Wait for the Lord. Be strong. Take heart and wait for the Lord. That's what David says, Psalm 27. David lays out a strategy right here for overcoming stress, anxiety, and fear should the worst thing happen to us in life. And it can happen. Verse 10, what did he say? Though my mother and father forsake me. Talk about a bad thing, being rejected by our parents. Some of you have experienced that. He says in verse 3, he says this, though an army surround me. Think about it. Go ahead, he says, think about it. You can think about the worst possible thing that can happen is what he's saying. This strategy I have for overcoming it, it'll overcome anything. I'm sure some of you, when you hear that this is about worry, stress, anxiety, some of you go, well, I know what that's like. I'm sure some of you have some anxiety you brought in here today. Some of you have a heavy heart. I'm suspecting that. And maybe just to see if this message is for you, well, I'll do a little survey and do a little clarification, find out if this message is for you. Think about the major areas of your life. Major areas of your life. Your family, your relationships, your health, your finances, your job or lack of job, your career. How many people would admit it by raising your hand? I got at least one thing that I'm concerned about in those areas. Raise it high. Look at that. That's about everybody. Stressful, worry, anxiety. This is some modern day problem we all know about. I read recently 75 to 90% of illnesses are caused by the stresses today in modern life. Johns Hopkins University surveyed 174 hospital patients. You know what they found out? 140 out of the 174, they listed as worry patients. And the majority of those, over half, 97, the people actually said it was stress and anxiety that caused them to end up in the hospital bed. Dr. Charles Mayo, founder of the famous Mayo Clinic, he wrote this once. He said, worry affects circulation, the heart, the glands, the whole nervous system. He said, I've never known a person that died from overwork. I've known many that have died because of stress. And to quote one more famous source, Charlie Brown. I always like to end with somebody credible, when I'm quoting people. He was given a report at school about daytime and nighttime, pulled out his notes, stood up in front of class. He said, daytime is so you can see where you're going. Nighttime so you can lay in bed and worry. Anybody lay in bed and worry? Anybody wake up at night, you can't go back to sleep because you've got stress and anxiety on your mind? Am I the only one? Yeah, more often than I like to admit it. I go to bed at night, wake up in the middle of the night, my head is racing, thinking about some of the stuff that I'm worrying about. I worry about problems that I'm facing. I worry about decisions I have to make. I worry about difficult conversations I know I have to have. I worry about my family. I worry about my kids, my grandkids. I worry about relationships. I worry about all kinds of stuff. I worry about money, all of these kind of things. My life, by and large, it is beautiful. It's great. But sometimes there's problems. Problems like everybody else. Money problems, job problems, church problems, family, health, emotional, relational problems. All of these things. And we live with fear. We end up being very fearful people because of all this. Sometimes we learn fear in our family, actually, unintentionally. But as a little kid, we can learn to be fearful from our parents even. I mean, how many moms, first day of school, they send a kid off to school. They say, okay, honey, this is your first day of kindergarten. First day of kindergarten. I want you to go out there. I want you to take some risks. Take some risks. Go out on a limb. There's big challenges out there. Face them. Roll the dice. Give life a shot. How many moms say that? What do moms say? Hey, be careful out there. Now be careful. It's a big, bad world out there. There could be a bad guy out there. Something bad could happen to you, and you might not be able to handle it. That's what happens. We end up being fearful, very fearful. Fear can actually be hidden. It can actually be hidden. We can hide fear in procrastination. Oh, I got to have this difficult conversation with somebody. I know I got to talk to them. I got to confront this. Oh, I'm just going to put it off. And then we end up all scared to talk to him. We don't want to see him. We got all this anxiety. Go, oh man, I know I got to talk to this person. Man, I don't want to talk to him. I'm afraid to talk to him. I'm just going to put it off. Maybe they'll move. Maybe they're going to move away. Maybe they'll die or something. I won't have to talk to him. If you're like me, procrastination can lead to fear. You have something to do, you keep putting it off, you get fearful about it. Keep procrastinating about it. Remember middle school science project? Remember the day it was due? I remember popping my head off the pillow. I go, man, that science fair project, it's due today. I had 9 months to work on it. I haven't even started. It's due today. I ran into the kitchen pantry. I grabbed a styrofoam cup. I turned it into the teacher. Teacher goes, Johnny, what's that? I go, it's a styrofoam cup of dirt. She goes, what's that thing in the middle? I go, it's like the solar system or something. And didn't you hate the kid that you could tell their parents made the project for them? You know, the dad drives up, flatbed truck, got a big volcano on the back. You knew this kid. You go, this kid can't even button his own shirt. He's got a volcano. How'd you come up with that, Copernicus? Psalm 27. David, back to Psalm 27. David highlights different scenarios that have the potential to create fear and anxiety, worry. Let's put verse 2 up on the screen. Look at what he says. He goes, when the wicked advance against me to devour me. He's describing opposition, somebody trying to hurt him, somebody trying to harm him. Ever had anybody trying to hurt you, harm you? Oh, that's a cause of anxiety, fear, right there. So here's the second one he does, verse 3. Though an army besiege me, surround me is what the word meant. There's no way out. Though a war break out against me, he says. Notice he doesn't say besiege us. No. He doesn't say a war break out against us. It's me. It's an army versus me. War versus me. He's talking about isolation. Feeling very lonely, all alone, overwhelmed, and nobody's with him. That's what he's talking about here. Sometimes problems are like that. You get a sense you're just surrounded by your problem. And nobody knows, nobody understands. You're all alone in it. Maybe financial, health, relational, job stress. Maybe you don't have a job, all of that. You feel surrounded by this problem, and it's not going away, and nobody understands. Look at verse 10. David says this. There's another cause. He says, though my father and mother forsake me. And there's no indication David's father or mother forsake him. Not at all. But he's talking about family anxiety, family dynamics here. Think of all the worry and stress that comes into your life because of family dynamics. Maybe, marriage conflict, divorce, dating conflict. Maybe tension between brothers and sisters, issues with parents, aging parents, issues with kids, issues with the in-laws, extended family. I think the number one conversation I have with people down front after a service, it's about stress they're experiencing because of family dynamics. Here's the fourth one that David lists here, verse 12. Another cause of anxiety. He says, false witnesses rise against me, spouting malicious accusations. Ever had anybody spreading outright lies about you? About what you said, what you did, what you didn't do? Man, I've had it happen to me. I've had it happen to me over the years. I had a website one time somebody was writing stuff about me on. I mean, I know what it's like. I mean, if you've had it happen, people spreading rumors about you, your stomach's like in a knot because of it, with a sense of injustice about what's being spread about you. And it's amazing. We got to think about this. Think about Jesus. Jesus was perfect, right? And people spread rumors about him and false accusations. It happened to Jesus, and he never did any wrong. I mean, they did all kinds of stuff. They talked behind his back, called him a glutton, called him a drunkard. They spread rumors about people he hung out with. You know, people he hung out with. They called him friend of sinners. That was not a compliment in his day. They attacked him with racial slurs. They called him a Samaritan. That was a racial slur. They called him a blasphemer. We got to remember, if Jesus, who was perfect every day of his life, had people spreading rumors and false accusations and criticizing him, what makes us think we're going to go through life and never have critics? We're going to have it. I heard somebody say this a week ago. They said, what What somebody thinks about you is none of your business. I like that. I think it's true. You could tweet that. You know. But these are anxiety-producing scenarios. David is referring to what I just ran through thousands of years ago. It applies to today. And right now I'm thinking, if you came in and you weren't anxious about anything, I'll bet some people got some anxiety now. Often when you talk about worry, people start worrying. Man, I wasn't even worrying about that before. Now I'm worrying about it. And the antidote, of course, to stress and anxiety, fear and worry, it's peace. Peace. And Jesus said, my peace I leave for you. Not as the world gives, but Jesus offers peace. It's the peace of God. That's the antidote to all of this. And by the way, we ought to pay attention to what David is saying. He was calm and at peace in the middle of this. He was calm and at peace. And truth is, David had literal enemies. He did have people that were against him. He had people with real weapons that were out for his life. Most of us don't have that happening to us. He had it happen to us. So we ought to see what he has to say. I mean, he's so confident in the midst of all of this. He said in verse 3, he said, I got so much freedom from anxiety and fear. He said, if an army encamps around me, I'm able to handle it. That's the kind of peace he had. And where did it come from? The key verse is verse 4. It's a turning point in the psalm. Key verse is verse 4. He tells us how he can remain calm and at peace when all these scenarios are going on around him. Here's the key verse. We'll put it back up on the screen. Psalm 27:4. David says, here it is. There's one thing I ask of the Lord. This is my one thing. This only do I seek. Here it is. That I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze on the beauty of the Lord and to seek him in his temple. David says, here's the one thing. This is the one thing. I'll give you the answer right away to his peace, his security in the midst of all this. He's focusing on God. That's the antidote. Focus on God, not our problem. And he says, this is the one thing I do, the only thing. And he breaks it up into 3 parts right there in that verse. And there's 3 verbs: dwell, gaze, seek. He says that's the key. And let's talk about it a moment. Verse 4, if we could put it up again, I don't know. One thing I ask of the Lord, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord. That's the first thing he says. What does he mean by that, dwell in the house of the Lord? Anybody know what the house of the Lord was back then? That was a temple. David says that I may dwell in the house of the Lord. It was obviously, maybe not so obvious. He was not talking about living in the temple. David couldn't live in the temple. He was not a Levite, a priest. He couldn't live there. It's not what he's talking about. Not physically dwelling there. You know what he's saying? I'm going to live knowing God is with me. That's what he's saying. I'm going to live knowing God is with me. I'm going to live trusting I'm not alone. Trusting God cares for me. And you can write this down. The first antidote to stress, your anxiety, live with an ongoing awareness of God's presence in your life. And we'll leave that up a moment so you can write that down. That's the first thing. We focus on God. And we live every day with that ongoing awareness. I'm not alone. I've got the ongoing presence of God in my life, regardless of what I'm going through. And there'll be times of anxiety and fear in our life. And when they come, we have a choice. We could focus on our problem, and then be overcome by it. Or we could choose to focus on God and say, God, I'm not alone in what I'm facing. God is with me. God cares about me. God knows. God understands. Then we'll experience his peace, not be overwhelmed by the anxiety, even if it doesn't go away. Isaiah 26, verse 3 says this: you will keep in perfect peace all who trust in you, all whose thoughts are fixed on you. And there's this is interesting, because I think there's this real common illusion today. And you know what the common illusion is today? The reason I worry is because I have problems. That's why I worry. If I didn't have problems, I wouldn't worry. If I didn't have problems, my problems would go away. That's an illusion. It is. The good news is there is going to be a day you'll have no more problems. The bad news is the day that happens. You know what that day is? It's the day you die. That's the day you have no more problems. Just something about death just smooths out the problems. You know, death, you go, man, I'm not worried about stuff anymore. You know? Death has a way of doing that. We got to learn to have peace in spite of problems. You only have peace when you're on vacation. When you're at Disney World or on a cruise, you're going to have very little peace in life. We got to learn to have peace in the midst of the problems. That's what we have to do. Paul said this to a church in Rome one time. Romans 8:35. He said, what could separate me from the love of God? I mean, is there something that could separate me from God's presence? And he goes through all these scenarios. You know, things we worry about. Danger, poverty, violence, death. Any of that going to separate me from God? Look at Romans 8:38. Paul says, I'm convinced there is nothing that's going to separate me from God. I'm always going to live in God's presence. That's not at risk, not being in the presence of God, not experiencing God's love. Never at risk. But I have to say, experiencing this and focusing on God and God's presence in our life, this is the difference between knowing about God and knowing God. Big difference in that. We can know about God, know about God's goodness, God's love, God's faithfulness, and still not know God in a personal way in our heart and experience God every day in our life. There's a big difference in that. Big difference. But knowing that God is with me, knowing that God is with you no matter what you're going through, that's the difference. That makes all the difference in the world. Knowing God is there in the middle of the darkest of dark, and we could talk to God, and God listens, and God cares, and God understands. That, knowing God in that personal way and talking and listening with God, that's a difference. That's the difference between caving in or taking courage. That's the difference between giving up or trusting. It's right there. David said, here's the one thing I do. This is it. Here's my one thing, and he lists them. This is what I seek. First thing, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life. I'll live constantly with the awareness of God's presence in my life. Then he goes on to say, and then I'm going to gaze on the beauty of the Lord. That's the second thing. And David is saying, there is a connection between what we gaze on, what we fixate on, and how much worries in our life. I think you agree with me on that. David says he's going to fix his gaze. He's making the choice, fix his gaze on the beauty of God. That's the only trustworthy thing to keep our eyes on in the midst of struggles. And here's number 2, write this down. We got to look to God as our ultimate source of strength. When we're going through a difficult time, we're going to look to God. God's our ultimate source of strength. That's what David's talking about. He talks about gazing on the beauty of God. He's gazing on the attributes of God. God's faithfulness, God's goodness, God's love, God's power. That's what he's focusing on. And when we go through a problem in life, we have 2 choices. Worship or worry. That's your choices. Worship or worry. Worship, focusing on God's goodness, or worry. That's it. That's your choice. Or pray or panic. Those are the 2 choices we have when we face difficulties. Worship or worry, pray or panic. And it's your choice. You decide, no matter how bad things are, you decide what you're going to focus on in your life, what you're going to put your gaze upon. But remember, God has power we don't have. God has power we don't have. Jesus said it, Luke 18, verse 27. What's impossible for people, for human beings, it's possible with God. God has power we don't have. We never give up faith. God has more power than we could possibly imagine. What's impossible from a human perspective, what looks impossible from our perspective, it's possible with God. We can say like David, I have confidence. I'm going to experience the goodness of God in the land of the living. God's got power I don't have. Well, let me give you a principle of the universe right here. And this principle of the universe, it works with toasters, works with vacuum cleaners, works with microwaves, works with coffee makers. Here's the principle of the universe. Things work better when they're plugged in. And so do you, and so do I. The only way we're going to get God's power is to connect God to God, day by day, moment by moment. Not just say I'm a follower of Christ, I'm trusting Jesus for my salvation. I know many Christ followers, they have no power in their life. None. No. Just being a Christian doesn't give us power. We got to moment by moment, day by day, reconnect with God. Say, God, I'm living in your presence today. I'm going to fix my eyes on you and your power, your goodness in what I'm going through. That's what David did. That's the basis of real hope, no matter what we're going through. Live with that awareness. David lived with the awareness of God's presence in his life. Lived with that. And he looked to God. God's his ultimate source of strength. And then he focuses on God by listening to God's voice, God's counsel, rather than the voice of all the fears that are in his head. And that's the third thing. That's the third thing. When he says, seek him in his temple, he's talking about listening to God's voice continually. That's number 3. That word seek literally meant to get advice. To get advice, to get counsel. That's what the word seek meant right there. When David said, seek him in his temple, get his advice, get his counsel. He's talking to God about his troubles. That's what he's doing. And he's seeking God's counsel. Therefore, he's focusing and listening to God. His fears are dissipated. Bible talks about this from cover to cover. Basic thing about God is that God wants to have a relationship with you and me, that we walk through life together. We don't just know about God, we experience God every day. That's why this imagery of seeking him in his temple, speaking to him, getting his advice every day, knowing God is there. That's what that imagery is all about. And it's what distinguishes Christianity from every other world religion. Every other world religion, study them. It's about duties, rules, to-do lists, obligations, follow certain rituals. Biblical Christianity, boil it down to its core, it's about a relationship with a living God who spoke once in history and continues to speak today. That's what makes the Christian faith different from every other belief system in the world. Jesus said in Luke 8:8, he said, whoever has ears to hear, let him hear. God is speaking. Put our ears on. God will speak. God will speak. So we dwell in his presence, experience the presence of God every day, gaze at his beauty, seek, look to God as our source of strength, and listen for God's counsel. Seek him. Only then can we respond like David, as he began in verse 1. Because of all of that, he was able to start right off by saying, the Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is my stronghold. Of whom am I going to be afraid? The answer is nothing. That's why he says in verse 13, this amazing thing. He says, I'm going to remain confident in spite of all this. I'm going to see the goodness of God in the land of the living. I'm going to see the goodness of God now, what I'm going through. And then he ends with this beautiful idea in verse 14. So important, he repeats it twice. And in verse 14, David's counseling himself right here. He's talking to himself. He goes, wait for the Lord. Be strong, take heart. Second time, wait for the Lord. I hope you're waiting on God right now. Not losing faith, not losing hope, no matter what you're going through. We often demand in this life what only the next life can give. We want a life of no problems, no stress, no anxiety, no heartbreaks, no disappointments. Jesus said in this life we'll have troubles. We'll have it. But we can give up or we can take heart. And we can focus on God in the midst of them. And I want you to know that God is here. And God is with you. God knows exactly what you're going through. And God wants you to know that he is with you. He's listening. He's caring, and He's going to work, but we've got to wait on Him. God's timing is perfect. We got to wait on Him. And God cares about every person here and listening so much. God cares about you so much. God reaches out in the face of the most difficult situations in life. And God speaks to us. God speaks to you right now. And you know what God is saying to you? God's saying, take heart. Don't be discouraged. He says, it is I. I'm with you always. I am with you always. I'll never leave you or forsake you. And I will uphold you with my victorious right hand. Let's bow our heads together. Let's pray together. David began this psalm by saying, the Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? God, I pray that we would be able to say that, every one of us. And God, you know every single person in this room, every person listening, watching this, and you know the struggles that they're facing in life. And they're all different complexities, dynamics. But God, you know what's going on in each person's life. And I pray, God, that we would speak to you and focus on you. We would give our anxiety and our worries to you right now. We would let them go, and we would say, I'm going to dwell in your presence. And I'm going to fix my gaze on your beauty, God. And I'm going to seek you. And I'm going to talk to you, and I'm going to listen to you. And I pray, God, that we would all be able to say that we're going to remain confident, and we're going to believe, we're going to see the goodness of God in the land of the living. And I pray for anyone here that doesn't know Jesus in a personal way. You know about him, but don't know him. Right now, I pray you would just say, Jesus, I want to know you. I want to know you, and I want to walk with you in this life. Thank you for loving me and being here, bringing me here today. And I need you in my life. And I give myself to you today. In Jesus' name, amen.